Screen curve. Tap to begin your adventure. Show achievements. Button. Reward. Daily reward. Points. 0 coins. 1. You get 1 coin. Each new day you open the game, you'll get 1 more. Read up. Get more interactive. Leave us achievements and watch. Back. Replay next. Replay next chapter. Life. 10. Morale. 0. Chapter 2. Gary. Heading level 3. You play Gary Reed, a farmer who prides himself on being a good man. He's physically fit, but has no training with weapons. Gary wants to be brave, but he doesn't want to die. Gary Reed kissed his wife to cease her protesting. I'll come back. I promise, he said, his hands brushing through her long hair. He knew she wanted to believe him, but her tears fell all the same, and he wiped one away with his thumb. You better, she said. Taking his sword, he left his home and walked to the town center. 15 men gathered there, a third of them holding torches. The rest held knives, pitchforks, and the occasional sword. They surrounded Bobby, who lifted a torch high above his head. It means a lot, Gary heard him saying as he neared. Can't tell you all just how much, but it does. My Susie would be damn proud, I do know that. We can't let anyone else get hurt. Damn straight, shouted an older man named Trent, the closest thing Durham had to a blacksmith. We ain't sheep for them to hunt, said another, Gary recognizing this one as a fat farmer named Russ. But you are sheep, cried a voice separate from them all, and the crowd turned. Darius approached them, wearing his full plate armor, which seemed to soak in the light of the setting sun, giving it a frightful look. Painted in white across his breastplate was the face of a roaring lion. He kept his greatsword sheathed on his back, and Gary was thankful. He'd seen the dark paladin draw it only twice, but both times the fire that glowed upon it made him uneasy. There was something unnatural about it, as if instead of giving light, it stole it and hid it away. Sheep, Darius continued, for none dared challenge him. That is, until you take up arms, as you have. This land belongs to the strong. It is weakness that lets men ignore the dangers about them, causes them to remain quiet in the face of injustice, to turn a blind eye to the chaos of his world. Tonight you do more than make his Susie proud. Tonight you do yourselves proud, your families, and your entire village. Let the wolfmen fear our wrath. Gary had been taught from a young age to be level-headed and not let himself get caught up in the foolishness of the mob. However, now he feels his courage could use a lift, and so maybe this once he could allow himself to cheer and follow the spirit of the crowd. What should Gary do? Cheer. Button. Say nothing. Say nothing. Cheer. Cheer. Life. 10. Morale increases 1. The rest cheered, and Gary joined inches. He still clung to his daughter in his arms, his only child still in her second year, and he keenly felt the call for strength and pride. His sword shook in his hand, but it was from excitement, not fear. Continue. Button. Continue. Life. To the river, cried Bobby, and the rest took up the call. To the river. Gary followed, imagining the cheer he'd receive if he were to behead a wolf man. Bobby insisted there would only be 1 or 2 nearby, 3 at most. With the group of them, plus the dark paladin at their front, they would crush any of the monsters they encountered. Russ liked to brag about the time he beat down 2 men from Kerr unarmed, and Trent would go on for days about the jeweled bracelet he fashioned decades ago for an elven queen, whose name changed depending on how drunk he was, but who could top the bravery of him facing down a wolf man and plunging his blade through its eye. At the town's edge, a man slipped into the group beside Gary, remaining at the back. His red hair was long and well cut. He wore silvery armor, heavy plates that made Gary feel naked in his simple farmer's clothing. At his hips swung a flanged mace, its stripped leather, its metal dark. Across his back hung his enormous shield. Coming with us, Jericho? Gary asked the paladin of Asher, unable to contain his excitement. That's great. The wolves don't stand a chance now. Jericho glanced down at his breastplate, and Gary saw the thick scratches across its front, dulling the shine. Some of Gary's excitement faded, replaced with a cold fear in his belly. I pray they don't, said the paladin, his face grim. They arrived at the river. Russ had agreed to let them take his boat, which he used for the rare trip south to sell extra crops to Asher's paladins at their citadel. It seated 4, but only Darius and 2 others crossed the first time, not wishing to overload it because of his heavy armor. Back and forth the boat went, taking several minutes for each trip. The river was wide and slow, its waters cold from the mountain streams that fed it. Gary hung back with Jericho, feeling safer at his side. We'll be able to kill them, won't we? Gary asked as his nerves continued to go. He felt fine when moving, as if filled with a sense of purpose, but now that he stood at the edge of a dark forest, watching a small boat travel back and forth across the Gaian, he felt his confidence falter. Darius and I killed one by ourselves, Jericho said, smiling at him. And with all of you here, we can handle many more, but do not hope for combat, nor a chance to be a hero. Pray we all come home safe, and that your village will never see another one of those wicked creatures for many, many years. Gary shifted uncomfortably on his feet, and he stared at the leaf-strewn ground. I just don't want to be a coward, he mumbled. The paladin put a hand on his shoulder, and when he looked over, his eyes were kind and unafraid. I know you well enough, Gary, to say there isn't the slightest chance of that. He pointed to the shore. Our turn. Darius was organizing men into groups of 5 on the other bank when they beached. Jericho, he called, seeing their boat arrive. Care to lead a smaller group, or would you rather remain up front with me? 4 groups should be enough, said Jericho. Give me the smaller, and I shall watch our flank. Darius pointed at Gary, the paladin, and the third bearing a torch. As he neared, Gary recognized him as the eldest son of his neighbor, a good lad named Dirk. He wasn't even 15 yet. What in the abyss are you doing here? Gary asked him. Your pa know you're out? Dirk blushed and refused to meet his eye. It won't hurt none, he mumbled. This ain't a deer hunt, boy. Continue. Button. Continue. Life. 10. Morale increases 1. It's all right, Jericho said, pulling his shield off his back. A soft blue-white glow came over it, and immediately Gary felt his anxiety sliding away as it bathed over him. Stay at my side at all times, Dirk, and keep your torch raised high. The wolfmen hate fire, and the light will hurt their eyes. Fight with honor, Darius shouted. I have their trail, and they will not dare run from our challenge. Darius led the way, 4 of their strongest at his side, 3 wielding swords, 1 dual wielding a torch and dagger. The other 2 groups marched behind and at either side. Jericho let them gain a bit of distance, then followed. Gary felt his stomach twist into knots as they walked deeper into the vile wedge. It was said that the elven goddess Celestia cursed the land after the gods' war, ruining the soil and stripping the land of wildlife. Gary didn't know if this were true or not, for this was his first time within. The grass was a pale yellow, though that could have been because of autumn's arrival, not any curse. There were no trees beyond the edge of the river, instead long, sloped hills looking barren in the growing moonlight. 1,000 campfire stories ran through his head, and try as he might, he couldn't banish them. The wedge was rumored to hold all kinds of villainous creatures, from orcs and goblins to the various animal men, all twisted and formed to fight in the gods' war. The wolfmen were one such creation, and of all the stories, he knew at least they existed. He'd seen the corpse tied at the town's entrance. Deeper and deeper into the wedge they traveled. Dirk grew increasingly nervous, but strangely, that made Gary feel better. His pride refused to let him show fear to a young boy approaching manhood. Maybe they've turned tail and run, he said. You sure Darius knows where they are? Dirk asked. I don't see no tracks. Gary had looked himself and saw nothing in the light of the torch and Jericho's shield. No wolfman tracks? Gary has a few options. He could shout his concern to Darius, who is up ahead. Another option would be to ask Jericho about this. He's a paladin, not a ranger. Nevertheless, he might know something about the Wolfmen. Finally, Gary could remain quiet and think about it for the moment. What should Gary do? Shout up to Darius. Ask Jericho. Button. Ask Jericho. Life. 10. Why are there no tracks of the Wolfmen? Gary asks the paladin. Too many men ahead of us marching over them, Jericho said. Trust Darius and the others. Continue. Button. Continue. Life. 10. The river was but a distant shimmer when they heard the first howl of a wolf. It cut through Gary like a knife, and for the first time it seemed like he realized where he was and what he was doing. He looked at his sword, an old relic passed down for 4 generations. He hadn't even sharpened it before coming out, ignorant of the proper way and not thinking to check with Trent. Men from the other 3 groups were certainly thinking something similar, for he heard them muttering among themselves. A second wolf howled, this time from the opposite side. Careful, Darius, Jericho whispered, although Darius was far out of earshot. It did little to help Gary's already crumbling bravery. They followed the lead groups into a gap between 2 gentle hills, their slopes hardly taller than a man. Their pace had slowed considerably, and Jericho lessened the distance between them and the others. When the howls came again, they echoed all around them. Gary swallowed, his mouth feeling stuffed with cotton. Beside him, the torch shook in Dirk's hand. Just 2, Jericho said. Either side of the hills. Don't panic. Stay with me, always with me. Several of the men on the right cried out and pointed. Gary looked but saw only the hill. Another howl sounded. This one directly behind them. He spun, his knuckles white as he gripped his sword. The grass was empty. Someone from the lead group startled and was swiftly ordered quiet. More and more howling, and this time it was the men on the left who pointed. Gary caught sight of a dark blur, and he couldn't believe how fast it glided over the hill, vanishing on the other side. Their groups halted, each one facing a direction. Moments later, Darius arrived and grabbed Jericho by the arm. Surrounded, he whispered. Gary stared back to the river, pretending he didn't hear and almost wishing he couldn't. Blurred shapes approached, hovering low to the ground. His heart crawled up his throat. How many? Jericho asked. I don't know. 7? 9? We need out of here, Darius. We aren't prepared, not for those numbers. Such a large pack. The wolfmen howled, and it came from all sides, merging together so that Gary couldn't begin to know how many there were. He imagined hordes of the creatures, enough to blot out the eastern grasslands, snarling and howling while drool dripped from their fangs. Jericho grabbed his mace, and Darius drew his greatsword. Dark fire bathed its blade. We hold, Karak's paladin cried. To the river, Darius, we must flee to the river. We will have advantage in the water, shouted Gary. No, we hold. All of you men, hold. We will hold, says Darius. What should Gary do? Run for the river. Button. Hold there. Button. Hold there. Life. 10. Darius rushed to the front, leaving the 3 there to defend. Jericho stood before them, his shield raised. Cry out if any come from the side, he told them. Gary, stand firm and watch for an opening. When you see it, do not hesitate. Do not be afraid. Kill it and live. I don't know if I can, Gary said. The dark shapes grew more pronounced, 3 wolfmen running at terrific speed toward them. You will, Jericho said. Somehow a smile was across his face, and for the first time in their whole trip, he looked calm. The wolfmen howled just before colliding with their forces. Jericho stood firm, his legs planted and his shield in place. The 3 approached side by side, and in unison they lunged. Gary watched, feeling as if his feet were buried deep into the ground. Dirk, however, let out a cry and swung his torch. The rightmost wolf man, having focused on Jericho, howled and turned its head away. Its slash went wild, and then it dug its claws into the earth to slow its momentum. The other 2 slammed into Jericho. Gary expected him to fly back, unable to endure such power, but then the light of his shield flared. The wolfmen cried out in pain, and then it was they who fell back, one staggering on 2 legs, the other falling to all 4s and snarling. It shook its head as if to clear away a fog. Jericho gave it no reprieve, stepping in and bashing its skull with his mace. It hit with a crack that made Gary's stomach turn. The one that had sailed past returned, this time more carefully. Dirk waved his torch back and forth at it, as if shooing away a stray dog. At first Gary feared he'd been injured, seeing something slick on his clothes, but then realized the boy had lost control of his bladder. He couldn't blame him. From up ahead, he heard constant screams of pain, snarls of wolves, and chaotic orders combined with pleading. I'm no beast scared of fire, the wolfman snarled at Dirk. The wolfman was focused on Dirk and his torch and appeared. The wolfman was focused on Dirk and his torch and appeared to be about to pounce. What should Gary do? Charge the wolfman. Throw his sword. Charge the wolfman. Life. 7. Life decreases 3. Morale increases 3. With a shout, Gary charged. He brought the blade of his sword around with all his might and struck fur and muscle. Although the blade was dull, blood spurted. The wolfman snarled and backhanded Gary. It was like a sledgehammer. The next thing Gary knew, he was picking himself off the ground. Dirk was on the ground, the wolfman on top of the boy. Dirk's arms were pinned. The wolfman bared his teeth, and as though savoring the meal he was about to have, he slowly lowered toward Dirk's exposed throat. Gary could not allow Dirk to die like this. Gary could try to distract the wolfman by shouting at him. Another option was to attack with his sword. What should Gary do? Attack. 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 Life. 3. Life decreases 4. Morale increases 3. There wasn't a moment to waste. With the wolfman intent on Dirk, he was exposed. Gary stabbed its side before it could bite down on Dirk. His sword sank halfway to the handle, then snapped when the creature twisted. Claws slashed across his face. The pain. There wasn't a moment to waste. With the wolfman intent on Dirk, he was exposed. Gary stabbed its side before it could bite down on Dirk. His sword sank halfway to the handle, then snapped when the creature twisted. Claws slashed across his face. The pain immense. Blood blotted the vision of his left eye, and he clutched it with a hand. Be brave, he told himself as the wolfman jumped off of Dirk. He saw only teeth. The dead one hanging in their town that had its teeth ripped out. He realized he'd never have come if he'd seen them like he saw them now. Its jaw closed on his shoulder. Its weight slammed him to the ground. Warm blood spilled across his chest. He screamed. He tried to swing his sword, but the weapon was pinned down. Continue. Button. Chapters. Back button. Continue. Button. Life. 3. Morale. 8. Continue. Its jaw closed on his shoulder. Its weight slammed him to the ground. Warm blood spilled across his chest. He screamed. He tried to swing his sword, but the weapon was pinned down. Continue. Continue. Life. 3. The abyss take you. The abyss take you. Jericho cried, smashing its body with his shield. Gary saw the light stab into it, as if the glow were a dagger capable of cutting flesh. It released its grip on his shoulder, and he let out an involuntary gasp. Down came the mace, catching the retreating wolfman across the snout. Teeth flew, and its blood sprayed across them both. We will feast, it shrieked. Jericho's shield shone brighter, and amid his delirium, Gary thought he heard the paladin chuckle. No, Jericho said. You won't. The wolfman charged, struck his shield once more, and then fell. Jericho's mace smashed the bones of its face, and it stayed down. Dirk? Gary asked, trying to stand. But Dirk was fine, and he grabbed Gary's arm and helped him up. To the river, Jericho told the two as he turned to the battle beyond. Run, and don't stop. What should Gary do? Retreat with Dirk. Button. Stay to fight. Button. Retreat with Dirk. Button. Reward. Wise retreat. Points. 1. Coins. 1. Know when to walk away. Know when to run. Chapters. Boost. Show. Go. Life. Asher be with you. Asher be with you. Gary said, leaning some of his weight on Dirk. You as well, said Jericho. They stumbled west, between the hills and toward the Gaihan. Soon they saw the river in the distance. Gary's shoulder burned, and every breath he took felt like fire in his lungs. Dirk didn't look much better, but guilty as he felt for burdening his wounded friend, Gary knew he could not retreat without aid. They glanced back only once, the torches looking like glowing dots in the distance. It seemed like an eternity, but they reached the river and the waiting boat. Dirk helped him inside, then prepared to push it into the water. Should Gary leave with the boat or wait for other survivors first? Leave. Button. Leave. Button. Leave. Life. 3. Gary went in and out of consciousness as Dirk rowed him across the river. Once on the other side, Dirk helped him out onto the bank. We had better get you back, said Dirk. No, Gary gasped. Leave me here. Row back and get more survivors. A look of panic came over Dirk for a moment, but then the boy nodded. I'll be right back. Gary sat heavily down on the grass and then lay back. Close by, he could hear the swish of oars through water. Far distant was the screams of men and the howling of wolves. Continue. Button. Continue. Life. 3. Time grew slippery. Gary remembered the first boat returning, weeping men disembarking. He heard muttering, names listed off. Counting the dead, he realized. He wondered if they counted them or not. More men appeared, though he didn't remember their arrival. The water splashed the shore, and he wished to dip his hand in it. Suddenly he was thirsty, very thirsty. Gary? Someone asked. He opened his eyes, not remembering closing them. A young face hovered over him, blurry and unrecognizable. Get back, he mumbled. I'm tired. Gary, it's Dirk. You got to stay awake. Gus says you got to. Darkness, filled with the sound of water. Something touched his shoulder, and the pain awakened there. He opened his eyes and saw Jericho kneeling before him. White light shone from his hands, which pressed against his shoulder. His drowsiness faded, and the pain, which had been all-encompassing, shrank down to something he could endure, something he could comprehend. Carefully Jericho wiped the blood from Gary's left eye with his bare thumb so he might see. Stand, Mr. Reed, he said, taking his hand. You have a wife and child waiting for you. Show scoreboard. Button. Show. Reward. Completed chapter 2. Points. 2. Coins. 1. Survive to the end of chapters. Back button. Leave us achievements and score. Watch back to watch back. Replay this play next chapter. Morale 0. Favor 5. Dimmed. Chapter 3. Jericho. Heading level 3. When the light of morning shone through his window, Jericho winced. Every part of his body ached, and it felt like a pack of giant bang drums inside his forehead. He'd stayed up late into the night, praying over the wounded and offering them healing magic. Between him and the town's midwife, an old woman named Zelda, they'd sewn, bandaged and kept as many alive as possible. After that, the entire village had gathered in a prayer of remembrance, for they had no bodies to bury. Under the cover of stars, they mourned those the wolves feasted upon. 7 men, he muttered, rubbing his eyes. We lost 7 men. I hope you're happy, Darius. He felt guilty saying it, but he also felt better. At least alone in his room he could grumble, mutter, and let his frustration show. Once in his armor and about the town, he had to be all forgiveness and prayers. Sometimes he enjoyed taking up his mace and smashing the head of an outlaw. At least he wasn't pretending about anything then. But of course he also knew he wasn't being fair. Darius had taken him out to deal with a threat to the town. None of them could have foreseen how serious it'd be. After the battle, he'd spoken with all but Darius, who had stayed quiet and away from the others. 3 wolfmen had attacked from the back, 2 from each side, and 3 more from the front. A pack of 10 so close to the Gaihan and the towers that guarded it. They'd killed 6 wolfmen and injured the remaining 4. Given how unprepared they'd been, it could have been far worse. Jericho? Asked the voice on the other side of the door, followed by a gentle knock. I'm awake, he said, sitting up in bed and stretching his sore muscles. The door opened, and in stepped his host's pretty daughter, Jessie. Forgive me, she said, turning away and blushing when she saw Jericho wore no shirt. He chuckled, tossed on his tunic, and then asked her what was the matter. Something bothered her, he could tell. It was written all over her face. It's Bobby, she said, struggling to meet his gaze. Her eyes kept flicking to the floor, and her hands clasped behind her. He hung himself last night. My father wishes you to pray over his body before we bury him. The words knifed through Jericho, but despite the pain, he wasn't surprised. He'd seen the lingering sorrow and death in Bobby's eyes. Last night's excursion hadn't brought him the satisfaction he'd hoped for. Instead, 7 of his friends had died, and many more suffered greatly. Again he thought of Darius, and wondered how the paladin was taking the news. I'll be there shortly, he said, sliding off the bed and reaching for his armor. Jessie started to close the door, then stopped. Her green eyes stared at him, and seeing the question aching to be asked, he prompted her to speak. Will Bobby go on to the Golden Land? She asked. Killing yourself, my father's always said the gods hate men who die a coward. Killing yourself is a sin, and to die sinning. His hand clasping his cold breastplate, Jericho stopped and frowned. He tried to decide what to say, what measure of truth would comfort her. What truth did he even know? I don't know, he said. I dearly hope so. He was a kind man. I'll pray for him, and pray that he's with his family in the hereafter. Surely Asher can fault no man for missing his loved ones as much as Bobby did. Darius said he deserved Karak's punishment. What should Jericho say? Darius was a fool to say that. Button. He speaks out of hurt. Button. Karak is an evil god. Button. He speaks out of hurt. Button. He speaks out of hurt. Morale 1. Favor. Morale increases 1. Jericho pulled his armor over his head, shifted it, and then walked over to kiss the girl on the forehead. He speaks out of hurt, he said. Pay him no mind. Now go, and tell your father I'm almost ready. She smiled weakly, curtsied, and then was gone. Jericho sighed. Continue. Button. Continue. 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 Morale 1. Damn you, Darius, he said, tightening the straps on his armor. For once, couldn't you know better? It seemed half the town had gathered at Bobby's home by the time he arrived. Jericho's host, the tall Jeremy Hanfield, stood in the center, clearly in charge. He was a distant relative of a noble in Mordana and owned more land than the rest of Durham combined. Thankfully, the corrupting influence of his wealth never went beyond him and the taxman. The people treated him as their leader, lord in all but name. There you are, Jeremy said, spotting him near the back of the crowd. Come, Jericho, come. Darius has refused to pray over him, but Bobby was a good man, and he deserves no worse than any one of us here. The way parted before him, and he stepped to the porch of Bobby's home. Inside, he saw a rope lying on the floor, having been cut from the rafter it had been tied to. Wrapped in a blanket was Bobby's corpse. His parents, their backs hunched, their skin deeply tanned by the sun, sat to the side, surrounded by their friends. Not far away, he saw the parents of Bobby's dead wife, and they looked too drained to cry. They'd lost all their tears the days before, suffering for the fate of their daughter and grandchildren. Jericho knelt before Bobby's parents and took their hands in his. Is there anything you want me to say? He asked. The father looked at him, his eyes puffy and red. He wasn't himself when he did it. You know that, right? He'd never do this. He was already dead, said the mother. Died when Susie did. He kissed both their hands, stood, and then looked to the crowd. Some wanted comfort. Some were there to support their friends, and couldn't care less what he had to say. A knot grew in his stomach, and his tongue felt layered with sand. What could he say to them? He knew so little. At the Citadel, they taught him the words for funerals, what to say for the passing of men, women, and children. They'd never trained him to deal with the looks they'd give him, the near desperate desire for relief and comfort. What should Jericho emphasize in his speech and prayer? Bobby and his memory. Button. Comforting the people. Button. Bobby and his memory. Morale. 2. Favor. 6. Morale increases 1. Favor increases 1. This funeral was about Bobby, his life, his memory. Jericho knew that Asher wanted him to honor this. Besides, Jericho was not the greatest orator, but he at least knew how to lead a funeral. Jericho gave them what he could, and it felt like exposing a piece of himself as he spoke. He told them of Bobby's kindness, talked of the love of his family, and the grace he'd accepted from Asher. He said not a word of his suicide. Let the gods deal with that. When he finished, he gestured to Jeremy, who stepped forward, 3 men with him. They lifted Bobby into their arms and carried him out. They would bury him in the fields, forever to be a part of their village and their way of life. Continue. Button. Continue. Morale. 2. Afterward, Jericho mingled, accepted compliments for his speech, and then searched for Darius. He found him outside the town, sitting with his back to a lone tree growing atop a hill. The wind blew, and it felt wonderful against Jericho's warm skin. Speaking to the public always made him flush and feel like his neck were on fire. You weren't there for the burial, he said as he sat down beside him. Don't deserve it. Jericho sighed. Whether he hanged himself or not, he trusted both of us, and at least you could have. Not him, Darius said, shooting him a glare. I don't deserve to be there. He was hurting, and I let him out into the wedge in hopes of aiding him. Instead, I made things worse. One of those that died was Bobby's best friend, Peck Smithson. How could he endure that? He leaned against the tree and thudded his head against the bark. I led us right into that ambush, he said, his voice growing quieter. The tracks were so obvious a child could have followed them. I should have known something was wrong. The people of his village aren't fighters. They're farmers, shepherds, and herdsmen. Now more are dead. The village suffers for the lack of hands, and the one I sought to help spent the night hanging from his ceiling by a rope. What should Jericho say to this? He could try for a good-natured joke to cheer him up. It is Darius's way to use humor. Perhaps the shock of Jericho using it, clumsily he expected, would shock Darius out of his misery for a moment, or maybe just tell him that what's done is done and to move on. Finally, there's the option of rubbing it in a bit. Jericho said the expedition into the vile wedge was a mistake after all, and maybe it's time for a lesson to his friends that revenge is not always the best policy. What should Jericho do? Cheer him up. Button. Suggest he move on. Button. Instruct about vengeance. Button. Cheer him up. Button. Reward. Joker. Points. 1. Coins. 1. You try to see the lighter side of things, or were you serious? Chapters. Boost your show. Go back morale. Yeah. You really messed up, didn't you? At Darius's glare, Jericho chuckled and smacked his shoulder. If our gods agree on something, it's that we're all human and all make mistakes. Let it go, Darius. You did what you thought was right. Next time, don't let your guilt keep you away. I'm tired of dedicating all the burials around here. Saying this reminds Jericho that Darius had just given a sermon this morning about punishment to those who commit suicide. Should Jericho chastise Darius for this? Gently chastise him for that sermon. Button. Leave it. Button. Leave it. Chapters. Boost. Go. Morale. Jericho gestured east, toward the distant river. What do we do about the wolf men? From what I gathered, it was a pack of 10 that attacked us. That, plus the raids across the river worry me to no end. They found the gap in the towers, and Durham's right there in the way. We killed more than half, Darius said. And that was with them having the advantage. Do you still think they'll press us? How do we know it was half? Jericho asked, voicing the fear that had been nagging at him. We were within the wedge only a little while. How many might be gathering? We could have stumbled upon a single hunting party, not the entire pack. Darius shook his head. That can't be. That would mean a pack of 50 or so, maybe more. It's been years since any packs of that size. The elven scoutmasters keep them thinned and at war with one another, and someone that strong usually finds an arrow in their neck. Except the elves are gone, Jericho said quietly. What are we to do? Said Darius. Just the 2 of us could cross the river and find out more. Jericho was not sure. Neither of them were scouts. He considered the idea that they request aid from others. There were soldiers in the towers not too far. One did not ask for their aid without reason, but he believed there was in his case, and maybe it would be better to err on the side of caution. Another option was to muster the villagers to bolster the town defenses. What course of action should Jericho suggest? Agree to scout it out. Button. Request aid. Button. Bolster defenses. Button. Request aid. Button. Agree to scout it out. But what course of action should Jericho suggest? Jericho was not sure. Agree to scout it out. Button. Agree to scout it out. Morale. 2. Favor. 5. Favor decreases 1. Perhaps we should scout it out as you say, said Jericho. Yet, the thought makes me uneasy. If we were to journey into the vile wedge and not return, the villagers would be all but defenseless, said Darius, finishing Jericho's thought. Nonetheless, to ask for aid without need would be an embarrassment. I will ask Asher for guidance, said Jericho. Darius crossed his arms, his face a mask. Jericho was relieved that the dark paladin did not make any outward signs of disrespect at the prospect of him communing with his god. Jericho nodded and then closed his eyes. Asher, protector of all that is good, I pray you give me guidance. Silence. Jericho pushed outward in his mind, offering up a measure of his own strength to his God. Gradually, a vision opened to him although his eyes remained tightly shut. A tower of gold. Jericho opened his eyes. We send for aid. Asher has told me, we cannot take any chances. Let us request aid from the towers. Together. We can handle this. Darius said, his stubbornness and pride returning. Whether we can or can't, I'd rather we err on the side of caution. Trust me on this. Continue. Button. 2. Morale. 2. Favor. 5. Dimmed. Darius sighed. Very well. I must be bothered by this more than I thought. Good. It's a welcome reminder you're as human as I am. Jericho gave him an exhausted grin, and the dark paladin relented to his good humor. Write your request. Darius said, standing. And I will sign it. Where are you going? Asked Jericho. I have a family deserving my apologies, said Darius. Not that it's your business. Jericho leaned against the tree, closed his eyes, and enjoyed the weather. Slowly he felt his tension drain away, and once renewed, he returned to Durham to write his letter to the Lord of the Towers. Show scoreboard. Button. Show. Reward. Completed chapter 3. Points. 2 coins. 1. Survived to the end of chapter 3. Chapters. Back button. Show. Go. Morale. End of the chapter. Well played. Your totals. Not bad.